How we doing, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. Tonight we are going to be discussing the championship losses and wins. We're going to talk about what the losers need in 2023. We're going to speak on what we forecast for the big game coming up in 2 weeks. This is not a prediction show. We're going to bring those as the Super Bowl gets closer. We're going to speak on the Brock Purdy injury and if the 49ers might have a famous quarterback in mind. And we are also going to talk about an interesting stat regarding the last 16 Super Bowl quarterbacks making their debuts that lost and the ill effects that come after that. Kellen Moore is also out in Dallas. I know Zappy's going to want to speak on that. With me today, we got Mike Zappy, we got Idris Salam, and we have Quentin Moore, a.k.a. The Mask, in the building. Good to see you, boys. How we doing?
2 more weeks, man.
We're good.
I'm forever blowing bubbles. Pretty little bubbles in the air.
We're going to start this. So I want Zappy to get rolling on this. Because I'll be honest, I don't want to end the show talking about this guy. So let's start it with him. Kellen Moore out in Dallas. Chargers a link to him. McCarthy to call the plays, potentially. Zappy, we'll start with you, resident Cowboy fan. What are your thoughts?
It's a move that needed to happen. You know, Kellen Moore's been our OC for the last 4 years, and it's been the same story every year. You know, out-coaching himself in the big games. A lot of questionable play calls that led to some bad outcomes. I mean, the last 2 seasons, we could look at the way each game ended, for one, with the quarterback draw last year and this year with Zeke under center and putting everyone spread out. You know, I'm not saying that we would have scored with 4 seconds left, but it was still a very questionable play call why you would do that.
Yeah.
You know, I think it benefits Dallas and it also benefits Kellen Moore. He needed the change. I think the Chargers are the perfect team for him, actually. And as far as Dallas goes, we've got to figure out, we got to answer the rest of the questions. You know, is Mike McCarthy the answer? Is Dak the answer? So on and so forth. So in order to find out if McCarthy is in fact the answer and Dak is as well, you have to move on from other coaches. Dallas is not cleaning house, but we have let go a lot of our coaching staff, and now with the addition of Kellen Moore. So it brings the question, are we going to move on to this year with Mike McCarthy as our play caller, or are we going to do our due diligence, and are we going to bring in an OC, someone like a Deuce Staley or perhaps a Byron Leftwich, or is the OC already on our staff? But just based on our current coaching staff, it's hard to find him. So, but yeah, I'm really happy about it. I know I was really upset last week when the news had broke that both Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore were coming back. I was happy about Dan, mixed feelings about Kellen. But now with this, it gives time, and they don't have to rush to a decision right now. They have plenty of time to figure that part out because you still have your head coach in the building.
Yeah, and possibly the next head coach also in the building, because I do believe that if things take a turn for the worse, or if you guys do not get past round 2 in the next football season, yes, I think Jerry's going to pull the trigger, knock out McCarthy, and bump up Quinn. Well, you know, it's sensible to me. I think that the answer is in the building if you go that route. And obviously that's going to also come with a potential quarterback change because Dak Prescott, oddly enough, will be an improve-it year in that regard. While we're on the topic of quarterbacks, I wanted to bring this up to you. Last 16 quarterbacks making their Super Bowl debuts that lost did not get back to the big game in their careers. Obviously, Joe Burrow, I would say smart money says he would break that streak. I'll let you guys mull over this. Whoever wants to chime first. Will Joe Burrow break that streak? And while you guys chime on that, I'm going to bring up the list of the guys that lost these games.
I think it is hard to put Joe Burrow in this category for a few reasons. One of them, when you look at the list of quarterbacks, with the exception of Cam Newton, many of these quarterbacks were not number 1 picks in the NFL draft. You know, you look at a guy like a Jake Delhomme, a guy that just came onto the scene and made it there with the Panthers. I don't think Joe Burrow had himself the best game, nor did he have himself the worst game yesterday. However, I think Joe Burrow is still one of the best 2 quarterbacks in the NFL. That honor does stay with Patrick Mahomes because they did win the game yesterday. But when you look at that list and you really break it down and you ask yourself, were any of those quarterbacks a top 5 quarterback at the time? The only one you could really argue for is Cam Newton, and he was coming off an MVP season. But after that, that Panther team kind of fell off the stage.
I think you could make an argument, looking at the list here, I think you could make an argument for Matt Ryan the year that they lost to the Pats.
Yeah, Matt. Well, that was my other one, but he wasn't an MVP that year. That's the only thing about it. And plus, Cam Newton had a better defense. Matt Ryan didn't. So there's a couple of things to look at. As far as that game goes, I mean, you look at the way the Panthers lost. They didn't blow a 28-3 lead where the Falcons did. So there's a lot of things to look at. But when I look at that list, I really have a hard time putting Joe Burrow in there because I really believe that the Bengals are going to be right back in that position. And really, if it wasn't for a Joseph Asai roughing the passer late in the game that put the Chiefs in field goal position, the Chiefs are looking at a 60-yard field goal with 4 seconds left, and it's likely going into overtime. Just looking at that one, at that one play alone, he didn't have to do that. And granted, that was a rookie mistake, but that one play alone determined the game. I'm not going to bring up any other plays, so I can't put Joe Burrow in that. But it is weird that he falls in that list right now.
Yeah, he does. But here's the thing. When I watched the game yesterday, Joe Burrow did prove to me that he does belong in the elite class. But the only thing he is missing is the offensive line, because he was getting brutalized yesterday by Chris Jones. And that Kansas City defense. That's the only thing Cincinnati's defense is above decent. It's above decent. You know what I mean? Secondary play is a little bit sketchy. But overall they held their own. But offensively, they got to get that line worked out in order for Joe Burrow to take that next step. They got to get that offensive line worked out, and I think that's who they're going to be targeting in the 2023 draft, is someone, some beef up front to, stem any pass rush, any anything that's going on that can hinder Joe Burrow's growth, because Joe Burrow has already been to the Super Bowl. He went last year. Right,
and a similar situation with a bad line.
Right, with a bad line, exactly. And he's going to go back multiple times. He's the real deal, Holyfield. You know what I mean?
It's Burrow and Mahomes are going to be the next 10 years Manning Brady. That's what those two are going to be.
I think with Burrow, they got to give him an offensive line, man. He's going to end up like Andrew Luck.
Yeah,
Andrew Luck was back there getting beat up, and he just said, "You know what? My body can't do it no more."
Yeah,
and
yesterday, the right decision.
Yeah, yesterday, it's like Burrow in the second half just running, just trying to like, okay, let me get open, let me get somebody open, let me throw somebody open, somebody get open, because these guys are coming in. Chris Jones was coming, he's barking, he's biting, like I'm coming to get you. So they got to get this man a front line. That's got to be. It's just like with Eli, with us. His last few years in his career, we had no O-line.
Yeah, he was a sitting
duck.
Yeah, and you gotta get this man an O-line, because Burrow was the type of quarterback, he'll take you on, but you don't want him taking on defensive men. You don't want him to do that.
And the sad part is the Bengals did just that this past offseason by going out and getting an Alex Kappa and La'el Collins. But then when you're missing 3 of your starters going into the AFC Championship game, it's one of those, like, really same exact outcome as last year, that it was our inability to stop the pass rush. And it wasn't because they didn't try. It's just the NFL happened and injuries happened. So maybe they need to work on their depth a little more. But yeah, it's just one of those. They did just that. And while it worked out, because that was one reason why they were able to string the amount of wins they did to close out the year, it's just when you're missing your starting left tackle, right tackle, left guard, things like this are going to happen.
Interesting Joe Burrow stat that I wanted to throw at you guys. And I said it going into this game. 4 or less sacks, they're going to win. 5 or more, they're going to lose. 5 sacks in the game. That stat once again tells the truth on what the Bengals were or weren't going to do. I know that there's been a lot of outcries by football fans, whether they had a horse in the race or not, in terms of the officiating. More so for this game because it was a more competitive game. I myself have no issue saying that early in the Philly game, there was a blown call. But given the fact that a dude in the Philly game basically played for half the teams in the NFL, they were doomed when Brock Purdy got hurt. And we're going to go into that in a bit. But, yeah, the officiating, what I'm going to take from this, and I'm going to do my best to not sound too pissed off. During the course of the NFL season, they take the highest graded referees and put them in one crew or a few crews. But during the course of the year, you have guys that depend on each other and that have a good rapport with each other and that have a good working situation with each other. And I do think that perhaps this might be something that the NFL might want to think about, maybe putting these guys together maybe for the second half of the year, not just the playoffs, for the sheer fact that I do believe to a level that no matter how highly graded you are, if you're throwing everybody together for the better part of a month versus the entire year and knowing each other, I do tend to believe that that could be an issue as well. It's like if make it about the athletes. Say if you put a super team together, a bunch of cats just come together, that doesn't always mean success. I think in the officiating standpoint, I'm not going to say that's the end-all, be-all reason, but I do think it had an effect or has had an effect.
And honestly, don't think that there is anything that can be done because I'd love to see the same crew that's worked together for 18 weeks go out there and handle the playoffs or the Super Bowl. But then you're worrying about conflicts of interest and things like that. Right. And it's just there's going to be
that is another thing I wanted to touch on because of the gambling aspect. At the end of the day, it's almost like the analogy of like, yeah, that dude drinks. Yeah, he's a pastor, but he likes to drink. It's kind of like the same analogy there because there's always a high temptation in a position of power, and now with gambling being more acceptable and more pushed actually by the leagues themselves, yeah, it could be one of the biggest challenges, I think, for NFL referees. I believe that too many rules and too many potential calls have too many gray areas in them. You take the Joe Burrow intentional grounding. Mm-hmm. I believe that was literally a 50-50 call. You could have threw it or you could have not. They chose to throw it because there were two parts of that play where I said, well, Burrow's still going forward. He's actually trying to throw the ball. And he did, and I don't think that the hit was factored in nearly as much as where the ball landed. So I do believe that that really was a 50-50. Obviously, there was a fishy play earlier in the game. I'll leave it at that.
It's the human element.
It's definitely the human element, but there are so many variables with the way that they have altered rules at different junctures of games. So basically, when you catch a football in the end zone, this is one of my pet peeves. If you have both feet down and you catch the ball, that should be the end of the conversation if you're in the end zone. What football move do you have to make? There's no more football field. You know what I'm saying? Like what football move? What to go jump into the do the Lambeau leap? Like what more football moves are needed?
You have to redirect your momentum backwards.
I understand. I understand why. It's just damn. I feel that they really do add on a lot of interesting layers to some rules to make the simplistic very complex.
You know what? I was watching a video today with Ben Roethlisberger. He was on a little podcast. And he was talking about some of the rules. He was talking about how in one game this season, a Pittsburgh defender grabbed Deshaun Watson's face mask right in front of the referee.
Yeah.
Right in front of him, and yanked him down. He said they didn't call anything. He said, but as soon as they sacked him, they called roughing the passer. He said the rules are so they're crazy. I mean, and even with the roughing the passer calls, I mean, it didn't apply to this game.
Did you see Chris Jones's technique?
Yeah.
It almost looks like he's hugging Burrow. He's like, I sacked you, and now I love you.
Right.
Like he's like, he ain't trying to drive him down.
It's like, that's what kind of happened to him this year.
Like this.
Chris Jones. Yeah.
Like, he's like, I got you, Macaulay. I got you.
Yeah, first they didn't want you to
just let it happen.
Put a pillow up under him and
right.
First,
Give
you
some
couldn't hit
cookies
him
and
This is
high.
the
milk.
guy that got hit with that weird call in the Raider game with Derek Carr.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you can't. It's like you can't hit him now. They want you to momentum. If you're swinging them, you can't stop.
But yet,
Momentum. You
our
got three
boy,
other guys. You
our
know?
boy Kayvon Thibodeau did snow angels next to Nick Foles' dead corpse, and nothing was even
Yeah.
thrown.
Right.
Right.
But this is what I mean about gray area.
But you ever notice? Almost every game,
Mm-hmm.
Thibodeau was getting held
Oh yeah,
multiple times.
it's
That
a
Washington
rookie thing
game
for
was
sure.
Never called it.
That
I
Washington
remember.
game was
I
crazy.
remember. I put this on your.
ref.
I remember. You put this on your personal page, and I said something along the lines of, "It's a rookie thing. By year 2, year 3, little by little, they'll be recognized more because I know Zappy, having a dynamic player, and Micah has seen it in his own right,
Yeah.
particularly in year 1 versus year 2. I mean, he still gets held,
Yeah.
but I think he gets a few more calls now.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, it's a frustration, and let's be
And
real. Last 2 minutes of a game, they just completely ignore it.
And that's actually a very good point you just made there, Richie. It's you bring up the whole Deshaun Watson face mask versus roughing the quarterback call or holdings on Micah, Chris Jones, Nick Bosa, the stars. That's the key word there, the
Indeed.
stars.
And that comes with time.
And you look at what the image Deshaun Watson gave the NFL.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's not going to get those calls compared to a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers that will get those calls. So there's all those aspects that you have to look into. Kayvon Thibodeau is going to get more of those calls next year. Yeah. No rookie ever gets the call. It's that simple. It's just like no rookie ever gets a foul called on him, and he's an NBA superstar. You have to earn that right, But that's the point of it. Is if you compare Taylor Heineke, who's been in the league now for a few years, started off with the Panthers, carried over to Washington, he's not going to get the calls. Where Joe Burrow, he's now been in the league a couple years, made it to the Super Bowl his second year, AFC Championship game his third year. He's going to get those calls now.
But it doesn't matter if Taylor Heineke gets the calls because his head coach didn't know if they needed to win to qualify for the playoffs.
Right. Exactly. No. But those are things I think that needs to be looked into more. It should not be, oh, well, you got your face mask held, but listen, I'm sorry, what you did to the NFL, I'm not going to call it. It should be even across the board where and then that's the other thing is a lot of these rules are made for interpretation by that person.
Yes, and that's what I mean about the gray area.
And that's the part they need to address.
Remember back in the 80s and the early 90s when the Miami Hurricanes was doing what they do, and they made that video saying what you could not do after you scored a touchdown. Right. That's what the NFL needs to do. Make a video so these players see what. Don't wait till the game starts and be like, "Oh, well, you can't tackle this guy this way." And with the tackling the quarterback, I haven't seen the actual roughing the penalty call that was legit when it came to like. I could see hitting him at the head.
You know what I noticed?
Swinging down.
Quarterbacks, to Zappy's point, like I saw DJ take a lot of hits that say a Tom Brady or a Matthew Stafford or a Rodgers or any of these vested veterans. They're getting that call 90% of the time. But this is the first time that we're used to Daniel Jones being a force.
Yeah, but even now, they're gonna come out with a when the owners' meetings happen, probably after the season.
Yeah.
They're going to come out with a rule about you can't tackle below the knees because of the ankle. You know
ankle
what I mean?
Knee. Yeah.
The ankle and knee. You can't go below the ankle and knee. So you got to hit center mass. And if you hit center mass and break a rib or knock the wind out of the guy, then they're gonna flag you for that. I'm like, well,
pretty soon the Pro Bowl is going to be the real thing.
Yeah,
we're a lot closer than we think.
Yeah, it's already going that way because the Pro Bowl is a flag football tournament. I'm like, I'm not interested in seeing
Hell no. Sean Taylor's rolling over in his grave.
Right.
I think it's simple. It should be very simple. Don't sack the quarterback below the knees because we could think about Tom Brady, Carson Palmer, no helmet to helmet. That's the obvious. We're trying to eliminate the concussion rule. But if you want a clear image of what roughing the quarterback is, the perfect play happened yesterday when Trent Williams slammed Kayvon Wallace to the ground. That to me would be a roughing the quarterback, Other than that, like it's just How do you
I
sack the
think it's
quarterback?
absurd how you can't fall on a quarterback. What are you supposed to do? You're 300 freaking pounds.
Exactly. And I know when I was sacking quarterbacks, that's exactly how I was doing it. I wasn't doing an alligator roll. I only did alligator rolls with running backs because of the direction we're running. When I'm going straight at you and you're not moving, I'm just going to fall on you. It's that simple, you know?
They used to call him Zappy Romanowski back in high school. He had
gotcha.
He had a couple of controversial calls.
They say he was a clean, dirty player, though, right?
Yeah, he was a clean, dirty player. Yeah,
because Romo was definitely not clean.
He didn't mean to kick the guy in the head.
Yeah,
it happened, but he didn't mean it.
No, I have this twitch in my leg.
Yeah, okay.
What do the Bengals and the 49ers need moving into the new year?
I mean, it's simple for the Bengals.
I think Q did a nice detail on what the Bengals need.
Yeah, they need they need to improve that defense, continue with that, and their line. The 49ers, they need to improve their secondary.
Yeah.
Because, you look at a CeeDee Lamb, he torched them. He really torched them. And one thing that hurt Dallas was that they didn't have a true number 2. But they need to work on that.
You missed Amari Cooper in that game for sure.
Yeah, because, everyone said this is what I tell people. We replaced Amari Cooper with CeeDee Lamb. And Lamb passed with flying colors. But we never replaced CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
That's the big one there. But as far as the Niners go, they need to go get themselves a true possession number 2 receiver. You have Debo, who is that running back / receiver. You're Percy Harvin, but they need another receiver, and they need to improve their secondary. They have a great front seven, but they need to improve that secondary, in my opinion. And that's the way I see it for those two teams.
I agree with both of y'all. That's it. That's definitely the second receiver for San Francisco, because Debo, he's just, like you say, he's like a Percy Harvin slasher, but you need that guy who's going to stretch it.
Harvin's a good comparison.
Yeah, you need a stretch guy who's going to sprint it down. Yeah, you just need a stretch guy.
Yep. You also need to take pressure off. Well, they have Brandon Ayuk and but again, like you said, Idris, you need to try to take pressure off George Kittle because he can't do everything. I mean, that guy's like the Swiss Army knife for that offense, for San Francisco's offense.
I would consider getting another tight end that could complement a guy like Kittle.
Yeah, that too.
You need somebody physical.
Yeah, because that's a physical team. Yeah. But yesterday they just got when Purdy went out, and I was like, oh, there go the game. Right,
they mentally unraveled on defense. Doing a lot of dumb shit that they shouldn't have done. Bottom line,
early.
And they allowed the final 3 minutes of the first half to basically put them out of the game.
Right.
Yep.
And yes, I think they would have probably lost given the inability to throw the ball between a guy who shouldn't be on the field and another guy who got hurt that shouldn't be on the field that was just kind of doing his best because they didn't really have any other options. But I will say this. With the Purdy injury, the UCL thing, and that's a time-consuming injury.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That's a pitcher's injury.
Oh yeah,
right.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
And this is something
Tommy
that
John, is it that like
that's exactly what you get Tommy John
surgery for.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so.
Yeah.
This is something that concerns Zappy with Josh Allen. I remember many a conversation about that. Ultimately, it happens to Brock Purdy, but it opens up this question: is there a real possibility that Brady could end up in the Bay, the team that he grew up loving as a young guy? He was actually in attendance when Joe Montana hit Dwight Clark for the iconic catch against Zappy's Cowboys.
I say no.
I say it's a chance, but I think if any way he'll go to somewhere. I don't know.
I mean, I guess Vegas. You got to consider the possibility because of the McDaniels connection.
Yeah.
I would say New England has a puncher's chance just because it's New England.
Yeah,
it's where he made his name. But I mean,
you have to say there's a chance for anything.
I say it's a good fit for him.
Miami, according to Miami, they're not going to pursue him. Not much we know. At least
they lie
now.
so much.
But we know Stephen Ross would never lie.
He would never lie. Man.
He would never fire a guy.
I say, I don't think they can go and invest in a Brady because you still have trade Lance. You still have to figure out if he was worth the number 3
thing
pick.
going on with Lance, he might not be ready for the beginning of the year. You got Jimmy G hitting free agency.
Jimmy G's gone.
Yeah, Jimmy G's gone for sure. There's a litany of teams that he could help.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this ultimately comes down to what happens with Aaron Rodgers if he indeed asks for a trade. He would be the big chip. I think so too, Idris. And Lamar Jackson, believe it or not, would be the second chip. Then that's where you have the other guys, the Carrs and the Tannenhills and the Garoppolos, those guys.
That's
the
one.
You know what? With that being said, with Brady, I still say no, because I mean I look at it like this: the guy's what 45, 46, something. Something. Come on, man, Father Time. It is undefeated. I feel like he needs to sit down. He's done it all. There's nothing left to see here. You know, it's like watching, Johnny Carson reruns at this point. You know what I mean? You're going to see the same thing over and over and over again. You're not going to get any more funny than what's already there.
I don't see him making them that much better. I'm with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to
have anything to do.
It's been proven since 2019.
Yeah,
because in 2019 he looked very pedestrian in New England. He needs a super team to be that guy these days.
Mm-hmm.
No, look at it this way. For this 49er team alone, first of all, this Eagles defensive front, before Brock Purdy went out, they were feasting. They were on Purdy. Purdy had already thrown what should have been an interception.
There's a reason he got hurt. There's a reason. Let's call it a spade. There's a reason he got hurt.
And Purdy can move a little better than Tom Brady, just slightly. Yeah. Tom Brady, if you put Tom Brady back there and you have that Eagles defense that was very equivalent to the 85 Bears, rushing the quarterback. No, I'm sorry. That 49ers team would be, in my opinion, worse off. Like Brady a couple years ago made sense for the Niners. Going into next season does not whatsoever. He doesn't. So it's just there's so many. He needs to retire, but that's definitely not a scheme.
He reminds me of the type similar to a Brett Favre that's going to play literally until everything breaks in front of you. I really believe the stubbornness is there.
Actually, he reminds me of a boxer.
Yeah,
that's been in the ring way too long.
Way too long.
And
like Ali.
You made the Holyfield reference, and you could use it again. To be honest, in a different way.
Let me ask you three. Let me ask you three a question. All right, just saying these trades happen.
Okay.
Let's put like fit wise. Rodgers to the Jets.
Makes sense to me.
Brady to the Raiders. Garoppolo to Lamar to Tampa. Garoppolo to Tampa.
Garoppolo to Tampa makes a lot of sense. I think Lamar's staying in Baltimore.
I'm just saying, but what if
Atlanta would make sense?
No, but what if Lamar went to Frisco?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
that one makes sense.
That does make sense. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, who would be?
Because you got to think, it's only been a full day that Purdy. We found out.
Right, they got the UCL. Yeah,
fellow Giant fan Doug Rush. That's actually how I found out. He posted it on his personal page.
But the only thing with San Francisco is they don't have the trade equity to go and get a Lamar Jackson because they used all that equity to go and get Trey Lance.
How would but how would the fit be? That's what I'm asking.
That fit would be
because you got to think Baltimore's going to franchise and trade if they don't want him. They're not just going to let him.
If they do that, all right, Atlanta is in the mix because I've been listening to the talk radio shows here.
You're right.
They have been talking about him coming to Atlanta, and it does make sense because it puts asses in the seats.
That would bring back the Michael Vick kind of excitement.
Yes, exactly.
He's a Florida guy too, so
very interesting.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
I like
this offseason is going to be very interesting.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm looking forward to.
I like the idea of Lamar Jackson going to San Francisco for a couple of reasons. One of them being, their West Coast RPO style of offense.
I think it's friendly to his skill set. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's very friendly to his skill set. And the reason why is because they don't rely heavily on having to have a 1,500-yard receiver and then a 750-yard second receiver.
Right.
You can now utilize CMC and Debo the exact same way, where this time you also have the legs of Lamar Jackson you have to think about. So you're kind of looking at a wing T offense in a way, where you got three guys. And you got Kittle, which Lamar loves a tight end. So that goes back to the point of getting another tight end in what is a deep tight end class this year.
Right.
You know, but will it happen? No, I think that's a very long shot because of one, money, two, they don't have the draft equity to make it happen. They would have to really include some players.
Well, he's
Yo,
not
this
on
is
the
kind of
contract.
literal. No, if they got like
He's not in the contract.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Lamar.
No,
Yeah,
he's not. But they're going to have to re-sign him.
They're gonna do, yeah, but here's
they
the thing
might
also.
they might pull some shit
Going-
where they
going-
franchise and trade.
Yeah, but going back to what I was saying about Atlanta, right? It
Mhm.
does make sense, but I don't think it will happen because Atlanta just drafted Desmond Ridder
Right. That Ridder, yeah.
last year, right?
You
gotta You gotta give Desmond Ridder a shot. He only played what 6 games, 7 games. Last year.
I think Atlanta is either trading or drafting a quarterback, in my honest opinion. I think they learned enough this last year.
Yeah, but they
what
didn't
they
have the
needed.
personnel also.
Yeah.
You know, to your point, they didn't have the personnel.
They threw Mariota in there and said a prayer,
Right,
essentially,
right.
what they did at the
Right.
quarterback position this year. And they drafted someone who I don't know how deep they believe in him, but enough to draft him. Question, boys.
Mm-hmm.
The Kelsey Bowl or the Reed Bowl, or are you guys looking at something else here? A little backstory. First time two blood brothers are playing each other in a Super Bowl. Last time
Kelsey Bowl.
I would say it's a Kelsey Bowl. Last time that immediate family,
Reed has
I
nothing to
mentioned
do with this. He's in it. He's in it on one side.
But I'll explain one thing here. He's one win shy of becoming the Chiefs' winningest head coach. He already has that with Philly.
Before you say that, before that, I didn't mean to interrupt you on this.
No, you good. You good.
Everybody's saying it's Andy Reid, OT versus, his current squad. And I'm
right,
like, no,
right.
It's not. It's not.
Mm-mm.
That Philadelphia team is totally different.
It's gone.
They're all retired now.
Yeah. He is 4 or 5 years removed from Philadelphia. Okay. That
more
Philadelphia
than that.
team probably exactly. Probably
more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, 10. It's his 10th year.
10th year.
Yeah, okay.
Wow, it's
okay,
been that long?
Way,
Wow.
I thought it was like 4 to 5 years.
I did too.
But
it moves fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
And I think part of that is because we associate his Chiefs run specifically with Patrick Mahomes, whose career has been about 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Right.
You could only call I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said, why is everybody comparing it to, old Andy Reid team to new Andy Reid team? Really, most of these fans are stupid anyway. They don't know what they're watching. And
I think it's more about the fact that he could become the winningest Chief coach with a win against a team who he already has the franchise lead with. That is an interesting angle.
Yeah, he'll of course he already pretty much surpassed Hank Stram.
Yeah.
And I feel like, with Andy Reid coaching Kansas City, everybody's like, well, that's his old team. I'm like, no, that Philadelphia team is something different. It's not the old Andy Reid team. There are no players on that squad.
Nope.
That are
only one still there is the owner. That's it.
Right. Exactly.
and Howie Rose and Howie Roseman.
Howie Roseman, right? And the
That's
GM.
it.
Now, that being said, Andy Reid is one of the best, if not, well, I would say one of the best. I wouldn't say the best. You know what I mean? He's one of the best head coaches in the NFL.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's earned that over time.
He might be the best today. Because honestly, I think he's better than Belichick today, but Belichick was better a few years ago. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And a lot of it has to do with personnel.
Thank you, Zap.
Yeah,
that's the way I look
nailed
at it.
Thank you, Zap. You nailed that.
Yeah.
When you talk about a head coach in a bowl, I think the perfect example of that would be the Gruden Bowl when John Gruden left the Raiders for the Buccaneers and then he beats the Raiders the following year in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, I think the headlines for this Super Bowl, obviously the media is going to call it the Reed Bowl because of what Richie said, while some people, myself included, will think, no, not so much because really Andy Reid does not have any more ties to this team because there's really only one player still in the NFL that played for him, and that was Deshaun Jackson. Other than that, everyone is long gone. And, you know, I do agree, the Kelsey Bowl, I mean, we're talking about two of the most
With their
animated
receiving
players.
issues, they might want to get on the horn with T.O.
Oh, God. No, but the Kelsey Bowl, you know, you're talking about two of the most animated players in the NFL.
Those
in a
guys
good way.
are crazy.
They're crazy. But, you know, I think the media is going to focus more on the fact that this is the first time in NFL history that we have two black quarterbacks starting for each respective team. That's the big thing, the big news on this one.
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to mention that, and I was going to myself, but
it's you can call it what you want, Reed Bowl, Kelsey Bowl, whatever. The media is going to call it what they want to call it because it's going to be based on
narratives are a big thing, though.
They did that back when it was Lovie Smith and Tony Dungy.
Tony Dungy,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, with the two black head coaches. Well, narratives are interesting because I'll give you an example. Like if we're talking specifically about black quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes would be considered an old guard, where Jalen Hurts would be considered the newer generation. What I mean by that, I'm not talking about their ages. I'm talking about their play styles. Patrick Mahomes, although he could literally play backlot football, can get the ball wherever he wants, and he is generational in that regard. Jalen Hurts still has to show me more before I buy into him as the end-all, be-all, can-do-it-all quarterback. But what I will give the kid credit for, he has a great offensive line. He plays within the system that he is in. And the Eagles, as much as I despise that team, I will give them their due and say they are that good right now, especially in offensive efficiency. They have a three-headed monster, and they have Jalen Hurts who could also hurt you, and he's a big-bodied guy. But, you know, I still think that he has weaknesses that the right defense can unravel, but the reality is, yeah.
And I mean, look at his statistics from yesterday. They weren't shattering by any means. You take away that Devontae Smith catch. If it would have been reviewed, then his statistics look even worse. But like you said, they didn't have to be, because when you have that defense doing what they were doing to Brock Purdy, Steve Young, Montana, was under quarterback for the 49ers yesterday, that was going to be the end result. That defense was all over them. And when you have a very good, the best offensive line in football like the Eagles do, life just gets that much easier.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
I want to see how they do when they have to come from behind 14 points. We haven't seen that. That's what I want to see. What do they do when, let's see, Kansas City jumps up 14-0? How do they react? Then you have to throw the ball.
Yeah,
and it's going to be fun.
Remember, they lost what three times this year, right? They lost to Washington. They lost to
and that's the only game with Hurts
Dallas.
that they lost.
Dallas.
Because the other two losses were with Minshew.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter the quarterback. You know what I mean? Because the offense is still going to run whatever quarterback is there. Yeah, it may be a different change. It may be different style of quarterback that's running the offense.
Like I thought Minshew played more than respectable against a very good Cowboy team.
Right. But with Hurts being back there, okay, if he's down 14-0, how does he respond?
Right.
I mean, if you're Nick Sirianni, I think the simple answer is you keep running the ball. You take a page out of the Titans playbook and you see what they did.
You allow your run game to get you back in the game.
Yeah, and now if you fall down 21-0 or 17-0,
that's a different conversation.
That's a different conversation. But it's this team. I mean, the pressure has not yet been put on Jalen. This is gonna be the best. I mean, the Cowboys was one team where they had a pass rush, but statistically speaking, the Chiefs were number 2 in the NFL when getting to the quarterback. So now it is really nice that we're getting the two best pass rushing teams in the NFL facing off against each other, because if the Chiefs can get off to that early lead and build momentum off of that and cause a 3-and-out on that first Eagle drive and take it back down the field type of thing, then yes, I think we're going to see it, because if you do not want to let Chris Jones starting to eat, even though Lane Johnson, Kelsey, and Dickerson and all the alignment of
Dickerson got dinged up at the end of that game. I think he's going to be all right. But the thing with the Chiefs is that because Patrick Mahomes, the prolific offenses they've had over the years, takes up so many headlines, this particular season, I think a lot of people have kind of ignored that the Kansas City Chiefs actually do have a good defense. Yeah. This is not like the old Chiefs that were giving up 36 points, but it's okay because they're going to score 40.
Yeah.
You
They
know,
have
this is a
damn good
different,
defense.
and they have more balance on offense too with the running game now, something that they didn't have in previous years.
Pacheco is that guy, man. Pacheco is that guy.
Yeah.
Look
Yeah.
at what they did to the
Reminds
Bengals
me
offense.
a little bit of a. He
Yeah.
reminds me a little bit of Joe Morris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a violent runner, man. And Morris wasn't a
Very
big guy,
violent.
but he was a violent runner.
Yeah.
Very
Reminds me a
violent.
little bit of him. It kind of like I saw him yesterday getting a big first down and running to the bench. I said, "Damn, that's who he reminds me of."
Pound you.
Just
Where
in
you
that
at?
moment, you know,
Where
it
you
might not
at?
even be the best analogy, but it was just who came in my mind when I
but
seen
you
it.
know who the X factor is on that offense? Valdez.
Scantling?
Yeah.
Yeah, Scantling.
That's
The
my
X
one
factor
worry,
of the
though.
offense.
I don't like their receiving situation right now. That is a concern of mine if I'm a Chiefs fan.
What I like about it, though, is because they don't have that star, obviously the Eagles are going to be putting all the focus on stopping a Kelsey. But
That
what the
could
Chiefs
open up
have,
the opportunities. I see that.
the Chiefs have a lot of second-tier receivers that can make plays. You don't know if it's going to be Juju, Scalding, even Kadarius Toney. You know, exactly. And Watson, too. They have good guys that can make plays, especially when you have the best quarterback in the NFL
That
can
what
make
it
the
comes
plays.
down to.
That's exactly what it comes
like
down
Aaron
to.
Rodgers and Mahomes for years have those ridiculous stat lines. But in the playoffs, that sometimes they're digging deeper, and that's where they would struggle with some of these guys.
I mean, honestly, I got to tip my hat off to Mahomes because, for one, playing on that ankle sprain that he was playing on and making the runs he had to make yesterday, I mean, he put that Chiefs offense on his back, like the way a star quarterback should. And he did what he needed to do to win the game. You know, and there's nothing you can take away from Mahomes. He played a great game hurt, and it's a good thing he gets 2 weeks to rest instead of one.
What you think Antonio Brown is saying about Juju Smith-Schuster?
I still have more Super Bowls than you.
But he's got to feel some type of way that he left Pittsburgh.
Juju's is becoming a complete player. He's a hell of a downfield blocker.
Juju's doing his thing. You know, he's like,
I think he earned another contract with the Chiefs, honestly.
Yeah.
I think
he definitely fits what they do, man.
Yeah, exactly.
He fits what they do.
Yep. Yeah.
Antonio Brown, he's burned so many bridges. Like, I'm not even being facetious. T.O. has a better chance of signing a contract with an NFL team tomorrow than Antonio Brown does.
Yeah.
Antonio Brown, well, he could finally leave his house, but he couldn't even leave his house for like about a week.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Exactly.
No, did he finally leave? Did he leave? I mean,
well, the cops finally pulled out. They decided to pull the warrant.
That story completely disappeared.
It was.
Yeah, you saw that, right? You saw how that just kind of. Yeah,
it was. Well, my son kept bringing it up, so we would check on it.
I'm starting to wonder: was it a standoff or a stakeout? Like, which one was it?
It might have been a little bit of both,
or it might have been a both, and with the cookout in there. Antonio's probably like, "I'm not leaving, but I'll cook you guys some meat or something, you know, while I'm playing with mine." As we
probably signed some memorabilia to him. Get the fuck out of here.
I love this matchup, man. Like, obviously, I wanted to see the Bengals, but quite frankly, this Chiefs-Eagles matchup, I think, is going to be a great one when you really break it down and see what each team brings to the table. It's that simple, you know, and it's a Super Bowl. And if there's one thing that I will say the Chiefs have the advantage on over the Eagles, especially Jalen Hurts, is the fact that the Chiefs have been there now 3 times in the last 4 years.
Yeah, this is a game that they're very comfortable playing in.
Very comfortable. And the Eagles, while they were there in 17, a lot of that roster is not there anymore. You know, some of it is.
Different team for sure.
So,
less than 7 guys, I believe, if that.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you still look at all the elements that are being brought to it. The Chiefs yesterday, I mean, I knew they had a good defense, but watching how they stopped the 3-headed monster, granted, Tyler Boyd did go out early, but the way they were able to slow down that receiving core, especially in the second half, it has to say a lot to that defense. You know, they really did come out to play, and I don't expect any less come Super Bowl Sunday.
And the key difference why the Bengals were able to do what they did to Buffalo and not do the same thing to the Chiefs ultimately came down to no pass rush. You had no Von Miller. That was a huge acquisition going into the year. And you're missing, what, 6? Basically half your defense. Half your defensive starters, I should say. Buffalo was missing. Andy Reid saying, they did fire him. They did fire him. And that
Andy
guy
Reid-
that they have a statue of, Mickey quit on him too. Until you're fighting Creed, I got to get you back in camp.
Andy Reid's going to show up with a plate of ribs and say, I don't need cheesesteaks. I got my ribs.
Yeah, I got them ribs.
Like,
Because KC got that. They got that barbecue.
they got that barbecue, man.
That barbecue.
There's a lot of things you can look into. It really is. I mean, the Andy Reid story alone is going to be hit on a lot. And let's face that, whether it's the same team
It's
or
just
not.
an eerie stat that if he wins with the Chiefs, he literally becomes the winningest coach in their history against the team where he is the winningest coach. I essentially think that's why it was at least noteworthy. But I'm not sure how I feel. I am concerned for Mahomes' mobility because as three of us being Giant fans here, actually you too, Zach, because you're a Cowboy. Nobody here wants the Eagles to win this game.
No, I wanted the Eagles to win yesterday.
I love my cousin.
Don't want them
He
to
just
win.
has a family member that's coaching in this game, and you don't want him to win.
That's when you.
I know he's watching the show too, but look, man. Aaron, you my cousin, man. Love you to death. But
look, as each of you know,
yeah.
I absolutely hate the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh yeah, I know you. I mean, you're Richie. Y'all. Yeah.
I am. Dude,
but if we don't hate them, we're not respecting the rivalry.
Right.
Well,
we have to hate them. 1933.
I dislike Dallas. I dislike Dallas, but not as much as I hate.
That's why I get crazy with some of these fans.
I just hate the Dallas fans.
I hate.
I can't stand the fans,
especially Zappy, right?
I hate. No, because I'm an honest fan. Like I said, the reason why I hate the Eagles because of what happened in '98 with Irvin, and that's because of their fans. But do I hate the Eagles more than the 49ers? Exactly. Do I hate the Eagles more than the Niners? No, I hate the Niners more than the Eagles. But the one team I hate more is Washington.
You know how I feel about Zappy?
I can understand the reasoning behind that.
The way I feel about Zappy, you know how you can understand this, Q, how how white people hate black people. But I don't like all hate black people, but you're different. That's how I feel about Zappy.
Right,
I hate all Cowboy fans, but you're different.
I don't sit here and say Super Bowl every year.
You're not like the other ones. You're different.
You're not like all the others. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I broke down the rivalry and to a lot of these, newbies.
This would be a great time to take out the knife.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he didn't say he hated me, but whatever, man.
But it's like I tell them. I said, look, the oldest rivalry in the NFC East is us and Washington because Washington came in 1932. Yep. The most fierce rivalry is us and Philadelphia because number one, we're 80 miles apart from one another.
Right, we're right.
You know what I mean? It's literally like an hour and a half, almost hour 45 minutes from each other. You know what I mean? Yeah. And number two, Chuck McNorrick and Frank Gifford.
That right there,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Killed him.
Almost murdered Frank Gifford. You know what I mean? On the field.
And that name Chuck Bednarik goes all the way back to their original title, Philadelphia, beating Vince Lombardi's Packers. Mm-hmm. Chuck Bednarik, basically stayed on top of Jimmy Taylor, run out the clock. Yeah. But that just puts in perspective how long they waited. Because they went from beating Vince Lombardi, waiting 60 some odd years, and then beating Bill Belichick, two of the greatest coaches ever, but that was quite the drought. But right now, as much as and I do sincerely mean this, I loathe the Philadelphia Eagles. Zappy and I have talked about this a lot off air. They are in a position where they can have a mini dynasty window. That is definitely something.
It's funny how both teams have that chance because it's only been a couple of years for KC and just a few more years for Philly. So within that 5 to 7 year window, this would be both of their second Super Bowl. Whoever wins
I think honestly, we're going to see this specific.
That's a good point, Idris.
No, and to his point, I think we're going to see this specific matchup right here: the Bengals. And do I dare say Dallas or 49ers over the next couple of years? I think we're going to see that, but specifically with this Chiefs team, because even no matter what happens, they have been to the AFC Championship game now 5 years in a row.
5 years in a
And
row.
and
Right.
here, and I'll bring out another point. And since 2000,
Mhm.
one NFC team has been to 7 NFC Championship games, and that's
The
Philly.
Eagles.
So they have kind of become
And
the
Andy Reid
standard.
accounted for 5 of those.
Yep.
but
Exactly.
Here's the thing. Here's the
That's
thing.
crazy.
With the NFC East hardening, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
remember that post I had weeks ago about the NFC East hardening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the strongest I've seen the NFC East be in years.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to go all the way back to the Buffalo 4 in a row.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And
Because we weren't had at different times, but all being strong at the same time. It's been
that
a
was in
minute.
the '90s. That was in the late '80s, early '90s when that was going on.
And I think
It's
07,
like-
3 of us qualified. In Washington,
Yeah.
us, and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is all 4 of us.
Well, yeah, and it's a very big possibility because I'll bring up these points. One, if you look at the teams that made it in the playoffs, Dallas was the youngest team out of all the teams. Up there was the Giants. The Eagles were a little further back, but when you look at the Eagles' situation as far as salary cap, as far as draft equity, as far as their youth, and they have a quarterback on a rookie deal, they're going to be around for a little while. So Washington was an older team with the opportunity to become younger in a good way by getting rid of players that they have that are backups. So it's not that their starters are the old ones; it's their backups that are the older players. So to Q's point that the NFC East, while a lot of people are like, oh, you guys had the easiest schedule. Well, the fact of the matter is, I believe it was 4 out of the top 5 strength of schedules to close out the year came out of the NFC East.
Right.
Yep.
The NFC East had the hardest schedule.
Yes. Yes. And when you look at what we did amongst each other, then there's nothing easy about the NFC East this year.
There's nothing.
And to think about this now, I looked at the strength of schedule for 2023, 2024, and Philly's number 1, we're number 3. Right? But I took into consideration, I said, look, I was telling people, yeah, that's what the media's putting out, but you don't know, you don't take into consideration the factors of the draft, the injuries, the free agency. You don't even know where everybody is on the schedule because the schedule hadn't dropped yet.
Right.
No, that's why so much changes year to year in this league because of all the variables you just brought up. And I mean, even the 49ers, like I was arguing with Brett quite a bit about this. I said, look, dude, I'm not saying the 49ers don't have a talented team. I'm not saying they're not capable of beating anybody on a given Sunday. But when you looked at their schedule going into that Dallas game the week before this most recent loss, who the hell did they play with an excellent offense
that
was putting up points like that? The only one you can name is Miami.
KC.
But they got their doors blown off by KC.
Yeah.
There's
a lot.
So let me tell you about the 49ers real quick. Both these teams that are playing in 2 weeks beat the crap out of the 49ers.
Yeah.
And you could say, oh, Purdy this and Purdy that, but at the end of the day, the defense, part of being a champion is showing mental toughness. The defense did not show that. Part of being a champion is showing discipline. The defense also didn't show that.
Yeah.
The Eagles were smart enough to keep their asses on the sidelines. I got to give them that much.
Yeah, they were smart enough because that one play, I know if I would have seen one of my teammates get slammed on the ground.
It's a hard thing to just sit and witness it.
Yeah.
But granted, you do have to tip your hat off at that entire bench, the coaches especially, to know that, hey, we won. Keep your head straight because this doesn't affect the 49ers at all.
Right.
They might get,
Look what happened to the Knicks in 97.
With the Heat.
Seconds away from beating the Heat, which they won the game, but they lost to their whole team.
Yep.
And I will say this because I think that the one team that has been the most, maybe not the most, but one of the best coached teams this year has been the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was on full display to close out that game.
Yeah.
And that's a respect matter from the players to the coaches to be able to sit there and say, yes, sir, we'll stand back. Like in a moment like that, knowing what's at stake, knowing what you have worked hard for the entire year, Like, you have to tip your hat.
Because I'm going to be
players.
honest, man.
Mhm.
I lost a little bit of respect for a few veterans on that 49er team, seeing how they imploded. And listen, I get frustration, but I'm sorry. That was Bush League, some of that towards the end of the game. And for me to say Bush League when the opponent is Philly, that's saying something.
You know
That's
what? They didn't look any better than the Giants looked.
No, they did, and we've all been saying it. They
Not
shouldn't
bad.
have
They
been the
really didn't.
team that was there.
Yeah, they didn't look any better.
You
than
know,
the
as
Giants
soon as I
Right,
saw
they
it was, as soon as the Niners beat us, and I actually went and saw the second half of the game,
did.
I
Mhm.
sat there and I said, "This is not going to be a game. It should have been
Yeah.
Dallas."
Well, that was part
I
of
will
my
stand by
motivation
it.
by picking initially, assuming Purdy don't get hurt. I picked Philly to win by 14 going in. I was right about a 3-point KC victory, but I was in the low 30s, not the low 20s. But
I was the only one that picked the Philly blowout.
Yeah, you were.
yeah.
So what do you think Kellen Moore ends up?
I think the Chargers. I think the Chargers make the most sense, and it now brings up the point that were the Chargers going into the draft? You know, one guy.
I'm with Zappy.
Did they
One guy-
sign him yet? Did the Chargers? Because I was
My
reading
buddy
reports-
Zach,
I thought-
who's a
I thought
big
he's-
Charger fan.
I thought he went to the Chargers. I could have
Yeah,
sworn.
I thought
that he
I
was-
saw
he is with the
reports that he
Chargers.
did.
Let me see if it's
I saw
official.
reports that he
I
did.
thought I'm pretty positive. I'm about 95% sure because it was a conversation me and my buddy had earlier.
He's
today.
going to Washington, man.
Yeah, he got hired.
Oh,
Yeah,
did?
okay.
Okay.
And that
Yeah.
and that makes sense because the one thing the Chargers are missing was a competent OC. And
I want to because I
now-
want to see what they look like. I want to see what the Chargers are going to look like with Justin Herbert under Kellen Moore's system. Because I know
Yeah.
they're going to be throwing it all over the place.
I
They
think
are.
he'll do better with Kellen. I think he'll do better there because that's the type of quarterback Herbert is coming out of Oregon.
Yeah,
They got to
exactly.
get healthy. I
Chris
think their
Peterson
biggest
wants-
hold up this year was health.
Because Chris Peterson came from Oregon
And
after he
coaching.
left Boise State, and he put
Mhm.
that type of system into. He continued what Chip Kelly did, but they had similar systems. So I see. Yeah. We'll
It's-
see. I think he'll do better in San Diego. I mean, San Diego.
It's all right.
Chargers.
Everybody
No,
knows
I
who
think
you're
so
talking
too.
about.
Yeah.
And honestly, the one thing I didn't want this is kind of the team I didn't want to see him go to because now this opens up the possibility of this Chargers team going out there and drafting the likes of a Bijan Robinson because that's all Kellen Moore's system is going to be missing. Austin Eckler's a good
You
back.
need a guy that can run in between like that because
Right.
Eckler
Yes.
can really be that other dude.
Yes.
Yeah, he's
in
the edge.
PPR
He's
points,
the
the
edge
catches,
runner.
the catches.
He's out
Right.
on the
You
edge,
put-
east west. He's east
You need a
west.
bruiser to pair with him.
You
Yeah.
put Bijan back there with that team and Kellen Moore as your OC, and believe me, Kellen Moore's no idiot. While I don't think he failed in Dallas, I don't think he reached his full potential. And going into a situation like
I think he was
the
held
Los
back
Angeles
in
Chargers,
Me
he
too.
may have Jason
I-
Garrett may have
I-
held him back and may have McCarthy as well.
I also
At
think that
times,
letting Amari Cooper out the door don't help anything you're trying to accomplish.
there's a lot of things. There's a lot of variables we can look at. But at the end of the day, going into that Chargers team with that defense when it's not injured or that offense when fully healthy, and you throw in a Bijan Robinson, we're now talking about what we thought was a 12-win team this year should be a 12-win team next year. It's that simple.
And all these
You know.
guys can coach at that level. That's no mystery. But at the end of the day, sometimes it really just comes back and down to a new address. At the end of the day, the guy that's coaching against the Philadelphia Eagles, once upon a time, the Eagles fired that guy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, once upon a time, the Jacksonville Jaguars fired Tom Coughlin, and then he went and beat Tom Brady twice. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
It goes to prove that change is good.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
indeed, we will be back roughly around Pro Bowl weekend, maybe early next week. We're going to hit you with our all-time franchises. That's definitely a ranking show that we've been working on. And you may see us pop up on something sporadic in the very near future. Got a little ways to the Super Bowl. This will be the first time going into a weekend where we don't have a game that matters. That's going to be a little weird.
And
But,
we have our award show we need to cover.
Yes,
before
we do.
Friday.
That's
So
all right.
All right.
Until next time, he's Zappy, he's Quentin, he's Idris. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight, and we will be back soon. Have a great night.